To do the in-class project, you first need to change the standard form equations into slope-intercept form. So we're going to start off with this example, and that means I have to subtract 8x. You can choose to use another sheet of paper and solve for solve for y. I'm doing it on this paper because I want all of my work shown, but I write small, and so you might not write small. So you can do this on another sheet and attach it to this if you want. But anyway, he's positive, so I just must do the inverse operation, which means to subtract. I bring down 4y. Let me zoom in a little bit because I am writing fairly small. And then that gives me negative 8x plus 4. And then I divide by 4. And that gives me y equals, now the reducing part is the part that you have to be careful about. But that gives me negative 8 divided by 4, which is negative 2. Bring down my x. 4 divided by 4 is 1, so plus 1. So that is what goes in this box. So now what you have to do is take your cards, and we need to find negative 2x plus 1. So I am shifting through my yellow cards to find negative 2x plus 1. And there it is. Let me zoom out. Okay, so given I have this card, I need to know what the M and B is. I know you're probably asking, why do you have the card when you could just write it in here? Well, if you solve for solve for y, and the card is not in the stack, that means you did something wrong. So go back and fix it and look to see where your mistake is. And then when you finish, if that card is in your stack, you know you have a better chance of getting it right. Now we need to find the M and the B. Remember, y equals mx plus b. So your M is negative 2. Your B is 1. Okay? Now, B also stands for y-intercept. And the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. So let's look at some graphs. On this graph, is the y-intercept 1? Okay, well, the y-axis is here, and it crosses right there, but that's negative 2. So this graph doesn't have a y-intercept of 1. So that wouldn't be the answer to this. Let's try another one. Let's look at this graph. It has a y-intercept of 1. Could this be the answer for this this row? Well, let's check the slope. To check the slope, you need to have the points. So let's find the points on the graph. I can use that one and that one. And let's check it and see what that is. Down 1, to the right 2. Okay, so my rise was negative. It went down 1, and then my run was 2. So is that negative 2 or is that negative 1/2? This is negative 1/2. So this is not the right graph. Well, let's look at this one. I see that it is at 1 for the y-intercept, because the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. And I also see that if I find my slope by plotting my points, it's going down 2 and to the right 1. And so down 2 and to the right 1 is going to be a slope of negative 2. And so a slope of negative 2, there it is, and it has a y-intercept of positive 1. So this is the correct graph. So I can go ahead and write K. Well, and I'm writing K in that spot because it says the graph letter. So now I need to ask myself this question. What is the 0? What does that mean? Well, it says right here that the x-intercept is this column. So 0 is just another word for x-intercept, just like B is another way to say y-intercept. So now let's find the 0. The 0 is going to be on the x-axis. So where does this graph cross the x-axis? Well, it crosses right there in the middle between 0 and 1. So it looks like my answer would be 1/2. But how can I check that to be sure? Well, we're going to use the calculator, type in this equation, and then hit Control T. When we do that, remember, your y-intercept is always when your x-intercept, is always when y equals 0. So let's look on the graph. Press Control T, and then look at the table and see when y is 0, and see if we actually get 1/2. I actually don't have a calculator at my desk. I'm going to run over there real quick, get a calculator, come right back. Okay, I'm back. So I'm going to press 1 for new document, press no, go down to graph. And you can't see that. So let's darken the screen a little more. Well, that's too dark. Okay, so 1, add a graph. Okay, I'm going to type in this negative 2x plus 1 here, because that's what we got for this problem. Press enter. And I see again, even on this graph, it goes right through 0 and 1, right there. So maybe it is 1/2. But I hit Control T, and I noticed that I need to find the 0. And I know you see this here, and you're probably saying, "Oh, miss, you got it wrong. Your answer is 1." Well, let's go back and look. The y-intercept is when x equals 0. The x-intercept is when y equals 0. So let's go back and look at that again. X is 0. So that's the y-intercept. That's not the x-intercept. Okay. So now let's look. Can we find the x-intercept? It's going to be when y is 0. Well, I don't see 0. That means between 0 and 1. So the answer would have to be between 0 and 1, which could be 1/2, but there's still no way to check on this table because it didn't show me. So I have one other thing I can show you. So I'm going to hit Control T and get out of there. And if I can remember how to do this, it's been a while since I've done it, but I'm going to press Menu and go down to Analyze Graph. And I'm going to ask it to find the 0. So lower bound just means go to the left of that of the line where it crosses the x-axis here. So go to the left of that, and my dotted line is there, so press enter. Now scroll over to the right, press enter, and there it is, 0.5, comma 0. My y is 0, and my x is 0.5. So the x-intercept is 0.5. That means it's 1/2, just like I said it would be. Okay, so we have the table, so it's not that we don't need the table, because we need the table for this. Even though we were trying to find the table to get this 0.15, we now have the table to fill this in. So Control T, and let's fill it in. It says, what is it when x is -1? So I have to go up. It is 3. And then for 2, it's -3. And then for 5, it's -9. Now, what else could you have done? You could have taken -1 and put it in this spot. So, real quick, negative 2 times negative 1 plus 1. Well, that's positive 2 plus 1, which is 3. And that's what we wrote. And then you could have plugged in 0. Negative 2 times 0 is just 0, plus 1 is just 1. And so on and so forth. And you could have gotten this for 2 and for 5. Last but not least, it's asking for the verbal description. The verbal description, I'm just going to tell you now, go ahead and use the slope to help answer that question. So if my slope is 2, well, negative 2, that means negative 2 over 1. So the y value, because remember rise is at the top, the y units are going to go down, decrease by 2, and the x units are positive. So they are going to increase by 1. So now you need to turn your paper over to the back and look for the answer that says decrease by 2, increase by 1. Okay, so it says decrease by 2 units, increase by 1. Are there any other decrease by 2? Increase by 2, decrease. No, so the answer is P. And let me show you again. The y value decreases by 2. The x value increases by 1. So that would give us a negative 2 over 1. So P would be the answer. And that is what you have to do on your test. This column may have more than one answer, and that's okay too. Thank you for your time. Good luck in class.